Hello and good day, everyone. Welcome to the first chapter of my debut novel, Beneath Burning Flags. What started as a project in high school became a book after 8 years of painstaking work. I'm so excited to share with you my first of hopefully many literary creations. Thank you again for tuning in, and from the bottom of my heart, please enjoy. Chapter 1. Not one? I retched out, fighting back tears as I held a head of cabbage, seeing the dozens of little holes that infested my crop. I stuck my thumbs in and pulled it apart. "Damned worms!" I cried, throwing the head to the ground. The small grey creatures poured out onto the frozen earth. "Not one, not one!" I screamed over and over, stomping violently, squishing as many of the wriggling things as I could. "Come on! Just give me a sodding chance!" My shouts disappearing into the highlands of Scotland. I kicked the ruined cabbage into the growing pile of waste, all of it, ruined. I ran my hands through my hair, gripping it tightly, fighting back the urge to tear it from my skull. "Not one," I muttered again, my voice fading. "Not one." I crumpled down to the dirt. I shouldn't have done cabbage. Fletcher was right. I should have kept to my beans. I sat there, my head hanging low, out of sight from anyone who might catch me crying. I smacked myself in the head a few times, stopping only as I heard the back door to the cottage slam shut. "No!" A haunting scream rang out, shattering my heart like glass. I spun around. "Penelope!" I got to my feet and rushed inside, pushing through the warped, splintered door that scraped against the ground from the broken hinge. "Sweet Mary!" I shouted as a clay jar flew past my head and shattered against the wall. "Penelope, no!" The love of my life wailed, tears racing down her bright red cheeks. She picked up a chair and flung it into the cabinet, busting the rickety thing into pieces. "Please, my love, don't strain yourself. It's not good for the baby." The baby, she howled. "You're not going to have a baby when the damn Londoners show up." "Penelope, please," I said, holding out my hands, trying to calm her down. She wailed louder, grabbing a log from the firebox and hurling it through the window. "Wait, no!" I called out as the log shattered the window. Penelope staggered, clutching her belly before falling into one of the only surviving chairs. I rushed to her side, pulling her close and cradling her head against my chest as she sobbed uncontrollably. "It's okay, I whispered. "At worst, it's debtor's prison." I ran my hand through her hair, her forehead dripping with sweat. "Maybe we can make a deal," I whispered. "I'm certain not all Londoners are bad." "You don't even believe that," she cried, her voice muffled in my chest. My eyes drifted to the unwound crossbow in the corner of the room. Maybe I could fight them. Go deep north and find the McDavid clan. Hide out for a while. I quickly shook the thought from my head. I had no strings for the weapon and only a single bolt. Sure, I had a broadsword, but no father to teach me how to use it. I just stood there, holding her like it was our last day on earth. Penelope breathed deeply. "I don't want to lose you." Her words struck me like a hammer, scattering my heart across the floor like the shards of glass beneath us. "You won't," I said. "Whatever comes, you won't." I kissed her forehead gently and held her tighter as the faint thudding of horse hooves grew steadily louder. I raised my head, staring out across the Scottish Highlands. A cluster of men rode along the dirt road toward us. I pulled her close, my grip trembling as the warmth fled from my skin. We didn't speak, only holding each other, watching as the distant shapes became clearer. Men, and they were looking for me. The galloping grew louder and louder, then, suddenly, silence. I took a deep breath. "It's time," I whispered to her, gently pulling away. "Jameson McGallan," a voice called from outside. "No," Penelope whimpered, hiding her face in her hands as fresh sobs overtook her. I stood for a moment, my lip trembling. I drew in a few deep breaths, then straightened my spine and rolled my neck until it popped, forcing a look of bravery across my face. Stand up to the world and beat it at its own game, just like Father said. I stepped outside. The low sun nearly blinded me, so I raised a hand to shield my eyes, squinting through the glare. 5 riders sat before me, their silhouettes sharp and still against the light, watching. Jameson McGallan, is it? I took a deep breath, steadying the nerves rolling in my gut. I said. I am him. Ah, excellent, one of them said, surprisingly chipper. May we join you inside? Bit nippy out, wouldn't you say? I kept my hand raised, blocking the sun. What for? I asked. Well, to talk business, my good sir. I frowned, confused. The one talking was a stumpy older man with a neck that would have made him top chicken in any coup. Remarkably well-dressed too, not a single drop of dirt on him. Beside him stood the man I owed money to, a local broker named Seamus. 2 redcoat guards flanked them, along with a 5th man. That one was dressed head to toe in black, a handkerchief covering most of his face. I stared at him for a moment. A scar ran clean across a milky white eye. Business beyond my debt? I asked. Business of your debt, my good lad. I took a breath and presented out my hands, ready for the cold snap of iron around my wrists. I'm ready. No doubt you already know what happened. Worms, was it? Seamus asked, spitting tobacco onto the ground. I gave him a nod. Ah, I see. Then we still have much to discuss, the older man said, dabbing his nose with a handkerchief he pulled from his pocket. I dropped my hands. Do we? Indeed, the old fellow chirped, swinging his leg over to dismount. His foot suddenly caught on the saddle, and down he went. Oh, St. John, he cried as he landed square on his oversized rear, letting out a small fart. One of the redcoats tried hard not to laugh. Oh, I say, what a dastardly beast, the man muttered, brushing dirt from his frock coat. Smells dreadful. I cracked a smile despite everything. You can tie up your horses over there if you like, I said, pointing toward the stables. Yes, quite. Well, I do say, the older man replied, trying to regain his composure. Seamus and the man in black climbed down from their horses, leaving the guards to tend to the reins. I took a few steps back, opening the door for them. Oh, the old man said as he stepped inside, his eyes darting around the cottage. Is everything all right? Looks as though you've been ransacked. No, I said, rubbing the back of my neck. It's just been a rough couple of days. Ah, he replied, forcing a smile. He brushed off a chair and sat at the table with exaggerated care. May I fetch you something to drink? Penelope asked, her voice still shaky from crying. Yes, that would be delightful, he said with a pleased nod. I crossed my arms, glancing at the man in the black cloak. An iron flintlock pistol hung from his belt, half cocked and gleaming. I should have told Penelope to hide. Who knows what sort of payment they're after. Ah, bless you, my dear, the older man said, as Penelope handed him a glass of ale. He patted the table with a slight grin and took a sip. He snorted and curled his lip and set the cup down. Ah, yes, lovely stuff you have here, he said, forcing another smile. I looked at the older man, then to Seamus, who stood licking his dry, chapped lips while eyeing Penelope. My stomach turned. My eyes flicked again to the broken chair leg nearby, its end jagged, sharp. Then back to the cloaked man. His gaze was locked on me, cold, unblinking. One hand hovered just above the silver-plated gun at his side. I swallowed hard. So I believe I failed to mention my name, the old man began, straightening in his chair. I am Sir William Summerford. I'm here representing both my friend Joel. He gestured toward the man in black and Seamus. He stood briefly and gave a slight, almost theatrical bow before easing himself back into the chair. It has come to my understanding that you've acquired a fair bit of debt, so it would seem. So it would seem, I repeated, eyeing the small leather case he pulled from his coat. He unrolled a piece of parchment, eyes scanning it. By this count, 60 seeds of cabbage, a hoe, a shovel, the land. My gaze shifted again to the cloaked man, still watching. He hadn't blinked, not once. "You've amassed a debt of £1,000, William said. I twisted my neck and felt heat rise into my face. My chest tightened. "Dastardly circumstances, just dreadful," he added. "As I'm sure it's apparent, we're here to make good on what you owe." Well, I said flatly, I can't pay it, so let's just skip to the part where you drag me out of here and toss me in a work camp." William sighed and rolled the parchment back up, slipping it into his coat. "Yes, it is true," he said, tone more formal now. "Debtor's prison is typically how we handle matters such as these. Incarceration in the work camps until one has worked off the debt through labor, or until outside funds are secured. The product of your labor, of course, goes toward the cost of both incarceration and debt repayment." My stomach churned, bile creeping up the back of my throat. "With the cost being 1 year per £200, William continued, "you're looking at 6 years of back-breaking work." The weight in my chest swelled, threatening to spill over. I forced it back down, inch by inch. "Yet," he said with a spark of intrigue, "there is another avenue to cover what was lost. But before we get into it, I must ask, what was the thinking in this? Why take such a drastic risk?" "I had planned to become a farmer," I said, the words like gravel on my tongue. "I took the land thinking that in a few years, with a fair bit of luck, I'd make enough to pay it back." William nodded slowly. "A good plan." "But it ultimately failed," I added, unable to keep a twitch from my face. "I see," William said. "And after using most of my money, you know what happened," I said, my eyes flaring over to Seamus, who stared lustfully at Penelope. "Worms left me with nothing." "Dastardly circumstances, I must say," he replied, rubbing his chin. "The avenue," Joel finally cut in. "Ah, yes, an avenue which takes much less time," Sir William said, eyes brightening. "A flotilla is being assembled, tasked to deal with a particularly dreadful state of affairs in the Bahamas." I looked up at Penelope. Her expression mirrored my own, caught somewhere between interest and suspicion. "What sort of dreadful state?" I asked, leaning forward slightly. "Reconstruction," William replied. "After the fall of the pirate Republic of Nassau and the slave revolt, many settlements lie entirely desolate." "Is that so?" I said, voice flickering with unexpected interest. "Towns like Kingston or Port Royal have gotten ahead of the problem, but many outer settlements haven't, and with how France is looking at us right now, the Kings decided to help quicken the healing process." "I see," I muttered, drawing in a long breath and letting it out in a short, sharp sigh. "So, what does that mean for me?" "You'll be moving on board the HMS Crusader, which shall leave shortly to help the struggling colonies get back on their feet." I paused, turning it over in my mind. "How much less time?" I asked. "Well, good chap, straight to the point." "I like that," William said, smiling wide. "We can get your debt down to a year." "1 year?" I repeated, barely daring to believe it. "Yes, 1 year at sea, working under a legendary Commodore. You'll see things most people never dream of. Adventure of a lifetime, if I dare say." The weight on my chest loosened instantly. My shoulders relaxed for the first time in days. "A year. I can do a year," I said, nodding. "There we go. Jolly good." William beamed, hitting the table with his palm before taking a triumphant sip of ale, which he tried very hard not to spit out. "Will it be dangerous?" Penelope asked, her voice quiet, not nearly as convinced by the offer as I was. "I can safely say he'll be in good hands," William said with a casual wave. "The pirate threat's been dead for nearly 10 years. No one is hunting anymore, especially not a mercy ship. Penelope turned her head, clearly unconvinced. When would you leave? Within the hour, William said without hesitation. Unfortunately, we've no time to delay with any fiddle-faddle. The ship departs in just a few days. Then, I said, sighing as I stood, we best be off. Penelope covered her mouth, her eyes already overflowing. Well, William said, patting the table with both hands, we shall give you a moment. Sort out any affairs before we begin. He stood, turned, and made for the door. I waited until the last boot heel of those English bastards left the threshold, then threw myself into Penelope's arms. We held each other tightly, my hand curling around the fabric of her white wool dress, my fingers threading gently through her red hair. I leaned in, close, under the soft morning light, my breath warm against her ear. I love you, I whispered. With a gentle murmur, the words slipped from my lips like a secret meant only for her. The intimacy of that whisper sent a shiver through her, one I felt echo in my own spine. Time seemed to slow, and the world beyond our embrace faded into nothing. I love you too, she said. I'll make this right, I told her, needing her to believe it as much as I did. I know. Maybe I can find some land out there, I offered, voice low. Get us away from all this. Stop talking, she said, grabbing the collar of my coat, and kiss me. I kissed her, deeply, wholly, holding her like I'd never get the chance again. And in some part of me, I knew I wouldn't. That kiss, warm and fierce, would stay with me for the rest of my life. Then I pulled away, heart aching, and charged out the door. I paused only once to look back, sealing her image in my mind before I closed it behind me. Up, boy, you're with me, one of the British guards said, slapping the rear flank of the horse nearest me. You can't be serious, I muttered. We've got rope, Joel added with a sneer, if you'd prefer to be dragged. I clenched my jaw, biting back a curse. Grog, piglet. One of the guards held out his pale, old hand. I took it, and with a hard pull, I was swung onto the back of the horse. Careful now, boy, said the rider. The road to Glasgow's no easy one. I frowned. You'll fall off at the first wee bump if you're not gripping tight. Get on with it, Joel snapped, kicking his horse into a gallop. My mount jerked forward, nearly unseating me as it took off. The thunder of hooves drowned nearly everything, almost everything. Behind me, Penelope's cries cut through the morning air like shattered glass. I could hear her wail, the sound dragging against my heart, carving out something raw and broken. I couldn't look back, not now. If I did, I wouldn't be able to leave. Oh, I gasped, squirming as I bounced up and down in the saddle, gripping the pommel for dear life. Aye, see, lad, hold tight, my rider called back. You're Scotty, I shouted over the wind and the pounding hooves. Aye, lad, sure as the day is new, he yelled. The horse leapt over a crick, slamming my backside back into the saddle and knocking the breath from my lungs. Oh! I groaned. What in God's name is a Scotty doing in the awful English red? He laughed loud and free, a sound that rang out like defiance. Ha! I'll tell you all about it when we reach Glasgow. And on we rode. The hooves beat like war drums against the earth, the world rushing past in a blur of stone and sky and fading green. The road stretched ahead, long and empty, offering no promises but more distance, more silence. The wind bit at my face, urging him forward, until the group were nothing but a shadow swallowed by the day. The sun hung low over the Scottish Highlands, sinking into the horizon like a weary old man. It cast long shadows across the land, leaving the day behind us. By the time we finally reached Glasgow, the streets were still. Not a soul in sight. The usual crowds, the noise, gone. Silence filled the empty streets, unsettling in its quiet. All right, we'll be here until morning, William said, grunting as he slid off his horse. He pointed down a narrow street. "The tavern that way should get you fed and bedded. Come morning, the Crusader will be here. Be sure you're on it." "Where will you be, sir?" I asked, unable to keep the edge out of my voice. "Loudmouth Scott," muttered the cloaked man beside him, just loud enough for me to hear. William didn't flinch. "I'm heading back to London. Bucky will be with you for the journey." I swung down from my horse, boots sinking into a cold puddle of mud. It squelched unpleasantly, as if Glasgow itself was trying to welcome me with a kick in the gut. "With me, lad," Bucky said, dismounting beside me. He passed off the reins to one of the guards. "Best of luck to you, gentlemen," William added with a polite wave. "All affairs should be sorted by the new year. Godspeed." Bucky waved back. I didn't. We turned away together, walking down the dimly lit lane, the night swallowing the rest of them behind us. The stone houses rose on either side, solemn and silent. We passed one after another, the chill biting a little deeper with every step. Eventually, we came to an inn with a single candle flickering in the window. Warmth, or at least shelter. "I'll handle the accommodations," Bucky said. "Just go on up and find yourself a room." I gave him a small nod, said nothing, and headed straight up the stairs. The wood creaked beneath my weight. I opened the first door I found without bothering to knock. The room was plain, dusty, draughty, but it had a bed. That was enough. I collapsed onto it without undressing, my limbs heavy as stone. I sank into the mattress like a man falling through water, too tired to fight it. Sleep hit me as though I had never slept before, and for the first time in what felt like ages, I didn't dream. Thank you so much for listening to the first chapter of Beneath Burning Flags. If you enjoyed it, you can purchase the paperback or ebook on Amazon. The link is in the description. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications so you don't miss future chapters. Thank you again, and I will see you in the next installment.